Hello everyone, welcome to CBR Saga, CBR's one and only podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the Daily Bugle, whose motto is, why care about fair and balanced journalism when you can rather read about Spider-Man kicking an old lady in the face and spitting on a nearby dog? But enough about corporate sponsorship, because we got another debate for you. There are an infinite number of Spider-Mans. Spider-Man. Nick, what's the plural of Spider-Man?
Spider people?
Spider people. Anyway, there's a lot of spider people-like characters out there, and we thought it was about time to pit them against each other. Today's episode, we'll see Team Spider-Man versus some classic symbiotes. First, we'll have Miles Morales versus Venom. Then we'll get a little funky as Spider-Man 2099 goes up against the terrifying Carnage. And then to wrap things up, we'll go with Tom Holland's Spider-Man versus Agent Venom. Oh man, it's going to be a good fight, and be sure to listen all the way to the end because I have a fun idea I want to try with my co-host. Speaking of my co-host, I'm joined by Nick. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. There's a literal spider on the wall in front of me, and it's too late to do anything about it, so I will try to keep my composure. But I also think it's a good sign for my fight today.
That's an excellent sign. That's a little bit of destiny, a little bit of fate right there. So we're going to get started here into our big fight. So spider people versus symbiotes and symbiotes. Nick, you're going to have to keep me on track for how many times I mispronounce symbiotes. I think this is an interesting setup for a series of fights because, a lot of them are so similar yet so different at the same time. What do you think of this overall matchup?
Well, it's really interesting because not only are many of the symbiotes very similar and the Spider-Men very similar, but the symbiotes are actually very similar to the Spider-Man because oftentimes in the comics, their powers sort of originate from Spider-Man and wind up being very similar. So it should be some good fights. You and I are going to have to find interesting ways to sort of differentiate these characters in order to figure out who's going to win.
I agree. So let's kind of move into our first fight here. So in this matchup between Miles Morales versus Venom, who you got here?
So I have Miles Morales. And also, I'll need to know if Venom is being backed with a soundtrack by Eminem. But because
that makes it even more powerful.
Yeah, it will factor into the fight. Miles Morales, I think, is the underdog. When you look at him in terms of strength, most of the time people assume he's not as strong as the Spider-Man around him or the symbiotes around him. But in all actuality, Miles Morales, I think, is one of the stronger versions of Spider-Man. I think he has more unique powers than other Spider-Men, and I think those powers factor in significantly when it comes to Venom's weaknesses. So I take Miles Morales in this.
See, I give the edge to Venom here because I think when you're fighting a symbiote, you're not just fighting one person. I mean, you're fighting two. And as I think we've seen and has been established, the Venom symbiote and Eddie Brock are two very different entities. Yes, they have this odd couple dynamic a lot of the time, but I think they developed into this rhythm that makes them almost unbeatable in my eyes. I mean, Eddie Brock has this scrappiness and this edge whenever he's not played by Topher Grace that you just know he'll do whatever it takes to, I think, win a fight, while the Venom symbiote, I think, gleefully loves dispatching enemies with, brutal vigilante justice. I mean, so I think in Miles Morales' case, he won't have what it takes to defeat this guy.
So Miles has come a long way. It took him a while, especially in Into the Spider-Verse. It takes him a second to come into his own. But once he comes into his own, he takes on basically the entire Sinister Six. He takes on Kingpin without really much trouble. I think the sort of dual personality of Eddie Brock's Venom is not good for him in a fight. Eddie Brock, just as a character alone, does things that wind up being to his detriment. He loses his girlfriend because he goes on her computer, which is so wrong in all the wrong ways. So he does things without thinking and they wind up hurting him very often. That juxtaposed with Venom, who does everything without thinking, doesn't really care what Eddie Brock has to say. They're at odds all the time. I feel like they don't work as well together. By the end of the movie Venom, when they are supposedly gelled, mixed, doing better together, we haven't really seen what they can do in a fight outside of Riot.
See, but I think that sort of dichotomy between these two guys brings out the best of each other. They're not working against one another to each other's detriment. It works to make them both better and to win kind of these matchups. I mean, because I think Miles Morales, yes, he's strong, but he seems like a very silent and defensive fighter. He doesn't really have that loudmouth bravado like Peter Parker has. And when going up against Venom, I think that's a problem because we know that Venom's weaknesses are sound and fire, but Miles likes to keep things quiet. It's why he can, kind of turn invisible and sneak around. He has electric shocks, which does put him at an advantage over, a lot of other Spider-Man, but electricity isn't one of Venom's weaknesses. So I just don't think Miles has the specific skill set needed to beat Venom. And I don't know, he might get eaten. I don't know.
Well, I hope not. But also, electricity on its own, I agree, is not a weakness of Venom's. You know what electricity is really good for? Starting fires. I think Miles Morales is a smart kid. Like he's not the smartest of the Spider-Men. I think there are smarter Spider-Men, but he's still like genius level intellect guy. He will figure out Venom's weaknesses of sound, of fire, and just in the movie Venom, an MRI separated Eddie Brock and Venom, and without a host to bond to, Venom dies very quickly. So I think if Miles can figure out a way to use his camouflage to surprise attack Venom, because you're right, that's sort of what Miles does. He uses those abilities to his advantage. So if he sneaks up on Venom, can use some sort of sound frequency to separate them, uses his electricity to light like some gasoline or something, and Venom burns up immediately.
So I think a lot of this comes down to experience and mindset when you go into the fight. Venom is bigger and stronger, and he has a little bit more experience than Miles Morales and knows how to handle the pressure. Miles Morales sometimes doesn't, handle that well. He gets nervous. He gets overwhelmed. And when he's going up against a terrifying, absolutely just scary creature like Venom, I don't know if he's going to be able to be in that proper mindset in order to think clearly, because Venom is not going to give him any leeway whatsoever. I mean, he's going to attack mercilessly and viciously and without, letting up in any sort of way. So I think if there's any hesitation or moment of doubt, which I think Miles is kind of prone for, then Venom is going to have the edge.
You say Miles will get nervous. Miles faces the Scorpion. Miles faces his uncle. Miles faces Kingpin. And yes, I don't care what you say. Kingpin in the Spider-Verse is just as scary looking as Venom. Without getting nervous, and he does it very well. And he gets the job done with more than one villain at a time. Venom does not have as much experience as you claim. Venom gets nervous when he has to fight Riot, because Venom knows that Riot is better than him, essentially. And the fact of the matter is, if Venom's weaknesses are much stronger than Miles, Miles can take a hit and get up. Venom can't take a sonic blast and recover from it as quickly. So I think Miles has the edge.
So, okay, we've given our thoughts, but it's not just up to us. So what do you guys think? Can Miles Morales tap into his, inner strength and pull out a victory? Can Eddie Brock and the symbiote work together long enough to squash the bug? Let us know in the comments as we kind of move on to our second fight. And this one is a bit more comic-based, but it's one that I think is going to be a fun one. We have Spider-Man 2099 versus Carnage. And in this one, I gotta take Carnage. I mean, I think Carnage is close to unstoppable, because I think Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, I think is a cool character with awesome costume, but I think he's missing a few vital elements that make him, a worthy opponent for Carnage. I mean, like for one, Miguel doesn't have a spider sense, and yes, while normally Peter Parker's Spidey sense doesn't work with Carnage anyway in terms of detection for the unrelenting chaos that Carnage is going to bring to a fight, you need something like that, or else it doesn't matter if you can just, see in the dark.
Miguel does have a sort of spider sense. It actually manifests itself at times in the comics in a form of telepathy. Now, I don't know that that'll necessarily help. Maybe he could sort of tap into Carnage's mind. I don't think it'll help. I think he'll be terrified at what he sees in there. Yeah. But Miguel O'Hara is actually, he's stacked with powers, with experience. The very fact that he comes from the future and he's faced futuristic versions of people like Scorpion and people like Vulture, I think facing a modern day Carnage would be a walk in the park compared to what he's seen already.
See, I think that's the issue, because, one, I agree. Telepathy against Carnage is not going to work at all. You take one peek inside Cletus Kasady's mind, and you're going to be a broken person forever. But I think overall, Carnage is the most powerful symbiote, and that's why it often takes a team to take him down. It's why Peter and Venom, people who are enemies a lot in the comics, have to team up a lot to stop him, because Carnage is just too powerful. So if it's just Miguel all on his own against the awesome might of Carnage, then, Miguel won't have a way to stop him.
But I think Miguel is probably one of the strongest versions of Spider-Man. So if Spider-Man needs to combine with people to beat Carnage, I think Miguel O'Hara already has that combination in him. He's been gifted with powers such as fangs. He has talons and claws that he could use to rip the symbiote apart, which while it's taking the time to heal himself, he could find another way to beat it. Carnage is strong, but he still has the same weaknesses as many of the other symbiotes. He still is susceptible to sound. He actually has a very strong weakness to electricity. So if Miguel O'Hara, he might not have the internal power of electricity, but he's smart as well, just like all the spider people. He could find a way to make some sort of weapon to neutralize Carnage. He could bite Cletus Kasady and paralyze him. There's many ways Miguel O'Hara could figure out a way around it.
So that's why I think those kind of abilities are like a bit of a wash, because yes, sound is a weakness of Carnage, but also Miguel O'Hara has a huge weakness with light. It's why he has to wear, special glasses, and his eyes are very sensitive. So if Miguel comes at Carnage with sound, Carnage will come at Miguel with light and kind of put them both on an even playing field. If Miguel brings some sort of weapon that shoots electricity because he's from the future and will invent something, Carnage has a special ability where he can, break apart and control tech with his symbiote. That's in the comics. It's something that he can do. So couple that with the fact that Carnage can create these massive weapons and these projectiles, paired with the unrelenting just force of someone who will not be afraid to just utterly destroy you, who will show no mercy. And if you have any sort of any weak spot, any sort of blind spot, any sort of gap in your thinking or anything like that, Carnage is going to destroy you. So that's why I think Carnage is going to win.
So I agree with all your statements about Carnage's power and things like that. The problem is, this is a crazy human being, like psychotic, like probably the craziest in the comics. That's not a good thing when you're fighting. You say like Miguel will have to, if he stops and thinks about it for a second, like that's enough for Carnage to swoop in. Carnage isn't going to be thinking about it. Carnage is going to be like thinking about murdering children or something because he's a psychopath. I don't think his mind's going to be here and now. I don't think it's going to be focused on the fight. I think his sort of crazy ways are going to make him make mistakes that people who are thinking about the fight would not make. So you're right, Carnage does have all these abilities that help him in battle, but he loses so very often because his mindset is not in the right place. It's on crazy thoughts.
Okay, I see. All right. So, what do you guys think? Does the future win this fight, or is it better to stay in the present? Can Carnage defeat this advanced Spider-Man, or will he fall in battle? You guys, let us know what you think and why in the comments as we kind of move on to our final fight here, and it's a big one. It's our final fight is Tom Holland's Spider-Man versus Agent Venom. A great matchup, I think, in my eyes. Nick, you can start this one.
Sure. So, first of all, Agent Venom's one of my favorite characters. I think he's awesome, and I want to see like a live-action version of him. That being said, I think he loses easily to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, because Tom Holland's Spider-Man is on a sort of genius-level intellect akin to Tony Stark. He hasn't quite reached Tony Stark level, but he has access to Tony Stark's technology. He has a working knowledge of how it works, and that combined with the sheer strength and abilities that he is gifted with as Spider-Man, I think is a deadly combination to beat someone as sort of simple-minded as Flash Thompson.
Look, Nick, I don't know if I told you, but this is a one-on-one fight, so, Tom Holland Spider-Man won't be able to bring in, like a mentor or somebody to assist him or someone to give him guidance, so it's just him on his own, and I think that's to Tom Holland Spider-Man's detriment, because Tom Holland Spider-Man is a puppy dog. Yes, he's smart, but he's also excitable, and he's strong. But at the end of the day, he's both gullible and easily, just morally wounded.
So I should also remind you that this is a one-on-one fight. Agent Venom is so often just used as a tool by some team. He was in the army, just sort of following orders. Then he joins the Thunderbolts, and he joins all these groups just to like follow orders. In a one-on-one fight, I don't think he stands as much of a chance. Yes, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is a puppy dog. Who would attack a puppy? Nobody. He's gonna look Venom in his eyes and freak him out. But no, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, behind the sort of innocent layer of a high schooler, is actually like an insanely vicious fighter. He's able to go toe-to-toe with Thanos. He's able to fight Captain America. These are sort of incredible feats of strength. And all of this needs to be thought of the fact that like he invented his web shooters. He has an understanding of the technology that Tony Stark gave him. He has the Iron Spider suit. He has far superior technology to Agent Venom.
Yes, he does have really good technology, and I'll give him that for sure. But I also think that he'll be more kind of sporadic and all over the place than Agent Venom, because you mentioned it before. Like Agent Venom is a soldier. I mean, like Flash Thompson as Agent Venom, he's seen war. He's trained in combat. He has precision and dedication, and I think that's what gives him the edge over this version of Spider-Man. Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man doesn't quip because he's trying to get into his opponent's heads and be funny. He quips because he seems like he has like ADHD crazy and just can't keep focus on a lot of things and thinks about 10 different things at the same time. And I think that's the problem when you're going up against a soldier who's trained in combat like Agent Venom is. I mean, like, and again, I think this is like the two mindsets against one here. And I think this works even better in Flash Thompson's case than it does in like Eddie Brock's case, because yes, I think the symbiote comes with a lot of experience, you know, like on its own, but also like Flash Thompson is no joke by the time he becomes Agent Venom. He's a fighter and has way more experience. So because their abilities are like the same, it comes down to the person. And I think this version of Flash Thompson beats Peter Parker.
I would agree if Flash Thompson had full control over the Venom symbiote. There's actually many times in the comics where Flash sort of loses control of the Venom symbiote, and I think that's the sort of detriment to these symbiotes fighting is, yes, two is like hypothetically stronger than one, but when those two ideals clash, it's actually a weakness. Tom Holland, while he might be thinking of 10 different things, which to me is a good thing that he can think about all those things at the same time in the heat of the moment, he has full mastery of his spider sense after Spider-Man Far From Home. All he needs is a moment where sort of Agent Venom and Flash Thompson disagree a little bit, and that's his moment to strike. He can use, again, the same sort of weapons. Tony Stark gave War Machine a sonic cannon, which he used against Wanda. I'm sure Peter Parker has access to that technology. He can do the same sort of thing to Agent Venom and take out Flash Thompson, who, because of his time in the war, he lost his legs in the war, so if you separate him from the Venom symbiote, Flash Thompson doesn't stand a chance.
All right, well, I still disagree. But who do you guys got in this final fight? Will Tom Holland Spider-Man defeat the Soldier of War Agent Venom? Who's stronger? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. So that kind of wraps up our fights, and I think we got a little bit of extra time. So before we wrap up, I promised a kind of a fun surprise. I mentioned the Daily Bugle at the beginning of this call, and actually, if you would believe it, Nick, I mean, I have in my hand some Daily Bugle headlines relating to Spider-Man that are totally 100% legitimate and totally true. So I thought I'll read you these totally unbiased headlines, and then you got to guess which Spider-Man movie it's referring to.
Great.
How's that sound?
Great. These are hot off the presses, they are?
Hot off the presses and ready to go. Just a beacon of journalistic truth. You ready?
Fantastic. Let's do it.
All right, so you got to guess which Spider-Man movie this comes from. Okay, the first one is Spider-Man hates education. Webhead destroys high school with unidentified cohort.
That sounds to me like the unidentified cohort being Stan Lee as a librarian in The Amazing Spider-Man?
You are absolutely correct. Number 2, Spider-Man viciously attacks beloved singer Macy Gray.
Well, it was her nutmeg fantasy, so I believe that's Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man.
Oh man, you are correct. 2 for 2. All right, the third one. Spider-Man in cahoots with big business. Menace beats up fired blue-collar worker protecting billionaire's assets.
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, okay. That's got to be... Oh, I'm leaning towards one or the other. I'm going to say that's Spider-Man Far From Home.
I think actually both apply here, both Far From Home and Homecoming. Both is because I would say Vulture is more of a blue-collar worker than Mysterio. But good guess.
Good point.
But I think both work. I think they would use it for both stories.
Very fair.
And then the last one I have here is Hungry Spider-Man mugs innocent pizza delivery boy.
That's probably... Oh, man, I don't know. Are you referring to Spider-Man being a pizza delivery boy where he stole that guy's pizzas in Spider-Man 2?
I am indeed, absolutely. Yes, I was. Spider-Man 2 is correct. Ding, ding, ding. 4 for 4. Good job there. And thank you for the Daily Bugle for giving us these amazing headlines. So that about wraps up our CBR Saga today. Let us know what you think in the comments below and who you want to see us pit against each other next. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my co-host Nick for being here. We'll see you next time.